Here's something almost every professional notices the first time they use Claude AI for something that matters. The output is good, the structure is right, the information is accurate, but something's off. It's slightly too polished. The sentences are a little too even. It sounds like a professional, just not like you. So you spend the next 20 minutes trying to make it sound more like you, adding a phrase you'd actually use, breaking up a sentence that feels too formal, cutting something that no one at your company would ever say. This episode is about fixing that, not after the output, but before it, because the fix isn't in the editing, it's in the brief. Here's why Claude AI defaults to sounding like a professional rather than like you specifically. Claude AI has been trained on an enormous amount of professional writing. When you ask it to write something professional, it produces the average of professional writing, which is technically correct, structurally sound, and completely generic. It doesn't know that you never use bullet points in client emails. It doesn't know that you open updates with a one-sentence summary because your CFO reads on her phone. It doesn't know that you use short sentences when something is serious, and longer ones when you're trying to be warm. Those things are your voice. Claude AI doesn't have them. You have to give them. That's not a limitation. It's a briefing problem. And briefing problems have briefing solutions. Most people try to fix this after the output. They get something from Claude AI, read it, and start editing. That approach works, but it's slow, and it puts you in the wrong mode, reactive instead of directive. You're responding to Claude AI's voice instead of expressing your own. The faster fix, and the one that produces better results, is to give Claude AI what it needs before it writes anything. Not more instructions about format or length, something more specific than that. Your voice in the brief, so it comes out in the output. Part 1. What your professional voice actually is, not as an abstract concept, as something you can put in a brief. Your professional voice comes down to 3 things. All 3 can go in a brief. 1. Your register, how formal or informal you are with different people. Most professionals shift register without thinking about it. Warmer with colleagues they know well, more precise with people they don't. The brief needs to name which register this particular output should be in and for which person. 2. Your patterns. The specific ways you structure sentences, open communications, close them. Whether you use "I wanted to flag" or "quick note." Whether you write "please let me know if you have any questions" or just end on the action. These patterns are so automatic you might not have noticed them, but they're what makes your writing sound like you rather than like a template. 3. Your relationship. What you know about this specific person that's relevant to how you communicate with them. Not just their job title, what they respond well to, what lands badly, what they expect from you. A brief that includes, "She tends to push back if the email sounds like I'm hedging, so be direct even when the news isn't great," produces something completely different from professional tone. Those 3 things, register, patterns, relationship, are what Claude AI is missing when the output sounds generic. Put them in and the output sounds like you. Here's what this looks like in practice. Email to my client about the project delay. Professional tone, around 200 words. Email to Sarah. I've worked with her for 3 years. She values directness over softening, and she'll appreciate that I'm flagging this early rather than waiting. I tend to open with the key point in the first sentence and use short paragraphs. Moving toward, accountable, and forward-looking. Moving away from, apologetic or over-explained. Around 150 words. She reads fast. The second brief takes 60 seconds longer to write. The output is ready to send in 30 seconds instead of 20 minutes. The extra 60 seconds is the most valuable 60 seconds in the workflow. Part 2. 3 situations where voice matters most. Situation 1. The email where getting the tone wrong has consequences. A difficult update, a scope change, a piece of news that needs careful handling. These are the emails where generic professional sounds worst, because the reader knows you and they can tell when something doesn't sound like it came from you. The brief for these needs two things above everything else: the relationship in specific detail and the toward away from pair. This is to James. We've had a difficult few months on this project, and I want the email to feel like I'm being straight with him, not managing him. Toward, honest and solution focused. Away from, corporate or distancing. He'll read between the lines of anything that sounds managed. That one brief element, he'll read between the lines of anything that sounds managed, changes the entire output. Claude AI now knows what James is like to communicate with, not in a generic way, in the way you know him. Situation 2. The update you send every week. Weekly reports, team updates, status emails. These are where generic voice is most noticeable, because the people who read them every week. They know exactly how you write. The moment it sounds different, they notice. The fix for recurring communications is to put your voice in the Cowork project context, not in every brief. Write it once, and every update brief starts already calibrated to how you communicate in that context. I tend to write updates in 3 short sections: what happened, what's next, and anything that needs attention. I use plain language, no jargon. I never pad. If it's a good week, I say it's a good week. If there's a problem, I name it in the first paragraph. That goes in the context once. Every brief for that recurring communication is then shorter because the voice is already there. Situation 3. The communication that will be read carefully. A proposal, a pitch, a communication to the board. Something that represents you at a level where sounding like a template isn't acceptable. For these, the brief needs a sample, not an explanation of your voice, an example of it. Paste in 1 or 2 sentences from something you've written that you liked. Here's a sentence from an email I wrote last month that sounded right. Your sentence. Match the register and sentence rhythm of that. Claude AI is excellent at matching a register it can see. Showing it 1 real sentence from you is worth 10 paragraphs describing your style. It's the fastest way to get an output that sounds like you wrote it, because it's calibrated to something you actually wrote. Here's the one editing move that's always worth making, regardless of how good the brief was. The personal pass. Read the output once, quickly, asking only one question. Is there anything in here I would never say? Not, does this need improving? Not, could this be better? Just, is there anything that doesn't sound like me? That might be 1 word, a phrase that's slightly too formal, an opener you'd never use. Change just that and send. The personal pass takes 30 seconds and catches the last 10%. It's not editing, it's finishing. The difference matters. Editing means you're fixing something wrong. Finishing means you're putting your signature on something that's already right. Part 3. Making this permanent. Here's where this system becomes powerful rather than just useful. Every Cowork project context you write is an opportunity to put your voice in permanently, not as a task you do once, as a standing description of how you communicate in this context with these people. Over time, your projects hold a complete picture of how you communicate across every major context in your professional life. Your voice with clients, your voice with senior leadership, your voice with your team. All of it specific, all of it permanent, all of it available to Claude AI from the first word of every brief. When that's in place, the personal pass gets shorter. The outputs get closer. Not because Claude AI has learned your voice in some abstract sense, because you've told it specifically and completely what your voice is in each context. That's not automation. That's operating at a higher level. The thinking is yours. The judgment is yours. The relationship is yours. Claude AI is just producing the output that reflects all of that, every time at a standard you'd be proud of. Here's what changes over time once this is in place. Month 1. You're adding voice elements to your briefs deliberately. It takes conscious effort. The outputs are noticeably better. The personal pass is catching 1 or 2 things, not 10. Month 2, the voice elements are in your Cowork contexts. Your briefs are shorter because the standing context is doing the work. The personal pass is catching almost nothing. just the occasional word you'd swap out. Month 3, you've stopped thinking about it. The outputs sound like you. Not because Claude AI has magically learned your voice, because your Cowork contexts are now a complete description of how you communicate, and every output starts from there. The goal isn't outputs that sound like AI. It isn't even outputs that sound like a professional. It's outputs that sound like you, at your best, consistently, without the time it used to take to get there. Before your next brief, 3 questions that take 30 seconds and change the output significantly. 1. What's my register here? How formal or warm does this need to be for this person? 2. What do I know about this person that's relevant? How do they read? What lands well with them? What doesn't? 3. What's the toward away from? What do I want this to feel like, and what do I want it to avoid feeling like? Those 3 questions, answered honestly, are the difference between an output you edit for 20 minutes and one you send in 30 seconds. There's a bigger point worth making here. The professionals who use Claude AI best aren't the ones who figured out the best prompts. They're the ones who thought most clearly about how they work, how they communicate, and what they're actually trying to achieve. The process of briefing Claude AI well, of articulating your register, your patterns, your relationship with the reader, your objective, is the process of thinking clearly about your own professional communication. It makes you better at it, not just faster. Which means the output doesn't just sound like you. Over time, it sounds like the best version of you, because you had to articulate that version clearly enough to put it in a brief. Quick reference. Everything in one screen. 3 things that make your voice yours. Register, patterns, relationship. All 3 can go in a brief. The brief fix. 60 seconds more in the brief saves 20 minutes in editing. Voice goes in before the output, not after. For high-stakes communications, paste 1 sentence you liked from something you've written. Claude AI matches what it can see. The personal pass. 1 read, 1 question. Is there anything I would never say? Change just that. Send. The Cowork move. Put your voice in the project context once. Every brief in that project starts already calibrated. 2 things in the description. The brief. 1 page. Free. The brief framework, including the toward away from technique and the voice elements that make output sound like you. Your first week with Claude AI at work. $30. Day 2 builds the Cowork voice context. That means every output starts already calibrated. Day 3 has 5 worked communication examples using the voice brief. Both links in the description. Via Claude for Lawyers on Gumroad. Same creator. That's episode 12. The brief is the voice. 60 seconds more before the output saves, 20 minutes after it. And over time, outputs that sound like you consistently, without the effort it used to take. Serious skills, actual output, every time. See you in the next one.